Yeah, Miss, it appears on that link now.
Okay.
Yes. Hi everyone, and welcome to Kodaikanal International School's third official Model United Nations and first ever virtual conference, KISMUN 2020. My name is Kevin Yagappa, and I am one of the heads of the organizing committee and your host for the evening. We are all beyond honored to have you all be part of our conference this year and would like to begin this conference by thanking all the people who made this possible. A big shout out to the Secretariat consisting of Niharika Ghoshal, our Secretary General, Arman Sahani, our Deputy Secretary General, Dia Shrestha, Shafani Arul Brabaha, and myself, the heads of the organizing committee. We definitely owe one to the amazing OC and multimedia team consisting of Sarah Francis, our event coordinator, Leah Nagpal, our head of networking, Abhibir Kishore, our treasurer, Anshuman Samya Narayanan, our tech coordinator, and Ava Nina Amatya, our head of social media management, who put together this conference from day one. Kudos to the executive board consisting of Megha Vinesh, Sangmin Han, Yewon Kim, Meher Nambiar, Inanna Joshi, Kairan Sinha, and some of whom I've already mentioned, who put hard work into forming our study guides, allotments, and other committee resources. A big thank you to Mr. Corey Stixford, our principal, Mr. Santosh Cherian-Panas, our vice principal, Ms. Ganga Christis, our finance director, and Ms. Stephanie Coe, our chief marketing officer, for supporting us in every step of the way. Our most heartfelt gratitude to Ms. Sophia Ryan, our MUN coordinator, faculty advisor, and the very backbone of this conference. And finally, last but not least, the biggest of thank yous to you delegates, faculty advisors, and keynote speakers without whom this wouldn't be a reality. Now, I take great pride in presenting to you KISMUN 2020's official promotional video.
India has been put on high alert after 7 patients suspected to have coronavirus are under observation. An Indian student from China is admitted in Jaipur hospital after he showed pneumonia-like symptoms. The Rajasthan government has also issued instructions to keep such patients in isolation. The breaking news is about the confirmed coronavirus in Kerala. One person found having coronavirus. First confirmed case coming out right there. India has recorded over 96,000 COVID cases. Now, this is highest so far.
This morning, COVID-19 is now the third leading cause of death in the U.S.
It's always a serious problem. That doesn't mean I'm going to jump up and down in the air and start saying people are going to die, people are going to die.
That this is an individual who is not concerned about the health, safety, and well-being of the American people.
Over the past couple of months, India's average number of cases per day has risen from below 30,000 to over 80,000. Even the US, at its worst, wasn't posting figures.
Moving ahead, first off, I present to you our Vice Principal, Mr. Santosh Cherian Punas, who will be talking about Cody School for a bit. Over to you, Mr. Punas.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you very much. Good evening, distinguished keynote speakers and my dear delegates and my KISMUN team. Warm greetings from Kodaikanal International School. Thank you, Kevin, for that wonderful video. It's really, I was a bit moved by the video. I'm taking some time to get back to my normal. We all are going through an unprecedented global mess these days, and our entire way of life are adversely affected. Our routines and habits have changed, and we are embracing, I think already we are embraced the new normal. By the grace of God, here at KS, we all are safe. Let me take you through a little bit about our Kodaikanal International School. Kodaikanal International School is an autonomous international residential school located in South India, offering education for children from grade K to 12. With a rich heritage spanning over a century since its establishment in 1901, KS has been serving young people from diverse culture and backgrounds to become leaders of the world needs. We do this through a rigorous and broad college-oriented IB curriculum that emphasizes deep learning and critical thinking and celebrates the arts, music, sports, social justice, and environmental awareness. Key milestones includes a number of firsts, from when we became the first IB school, first international in India and the third in Asia, by adopting the International Baccalaureate Diploma program in 1976, at the time among only 9 other schools worldwide, to when we became the first school in India to have its own separate campus for camping and outdoor activities in 1994. At the heart of the program is a balanced approach catering to the students' passions, strengths, and academic requirements. The school's student community consists of over 400 children representing around 23 countries. Our greatest strength lies in our learning as a community, living together in a variety of cultures, distinct faiths, and varied experiences spanning the globe. We provide a wide range of opportunities to our students to be citizens of the world, from student exchange programs with schools in France, Germany, and Italy, to providing a platform to practice and exercise the leadership capabilities in our local community through our social and environmental programs. Our students also participate in a variety of national and international experiences, such as the Model United Nations, other multidisciplinary exchanges, conferences, and competitions. Our unique location and the natural beauty of Kodaikanal, a hill station nestled in the Palani Hills at 7,000 feet above sea level, provides our students with an unparalleled experience of the environment and extraordinary adventures with nature. Hiking and camping has been a main feature for the KS education that provides students the opportunity to explore the natural beauty of the Western Ghats. As I mentioned earlier, we all are embracing or already embraced the new normal. The theme of this MUN conference, adaptability, One of the meanings I got from dictionary is adaptability, shared responsibility to overcome all obstacles that the near future may throw our way. At KIS, we are morally and professionally committed to the continuity of education of our students. We started our online classes immediately after the government of India imposed the complete lockdown. That was on in the month of March, and we started our online classes on March 25th. We strongly believe that it is and we think that it is very important to connect with our students, and we are professionally and morally responsible to continue the education of our children, as I have mentioned earlier. Hence, we opted for synchronous learning and followed normal school schedule, thus ensured actual student-teacher interaction. We have done numerous parent survey and student survey, and we are so encouraged from the results of the feedback from parents and students. And our success in online teaching and learning was a result of many factors. One of the factors is that all our teachers and administrators have enrolled themselves in the Google Certified Educator Training Program, Level 1, to be able to successfully implement G Suite for education into their teaching practice. Google Certified Educator is a program designed and managed by Google for educators who use G Suite for education as part of their teaching and student learning. There comes the adaptation. All our young teachers at the age of 25 to 30, and our teachers, those who are going to retire at the age of 59 and 60, they all went through this Google certified examination, and all of them are now good Google certified educators. Our online learning policies are designed to align with our mission and vision to enhance the emotional and physical well-being of our students while upholding the best interactive teaching and learning outcome. Our online curriculum is based on concept-based learning. Class activities and lessons are differentiated to address all learning styles, and e-learning interactivity is fostered and nurtured to increase learner motivation. Teachers will give and ask for meaningful, consistent, and frequent feedback. We encourage all our students to maintain a healthy balance between academic learning and physical, spiritual, social, and emotional growth, as well as free time activities, even in an online environment. We conduct virtual assemblies, homerooms, and provide other opportunities to help our students to maintain a healthy lifestyle. KISMUN, that's what we call KISMUN, is an active club which meets twice a week to learn and discuss the proceedings of MUN. We have audition and the introduction of members every year. Students prepare themselves in diplomacy and debating. They attend national and international conferences and have gained a great learning experience and many awards. I take this opportunity to congratulate my KISMUN team and Sophia for this wonderful initiative and the way you have organized. My dear students, you already proved that you have awesome. Good job, my KISMUN team. I want to tell you, when you participate in conference like this, usually we all think, what is the takeaway? What did I gain from this conference? But I'll tell you at this point of time, to all delegates, think of what you can contribute. Think of what you can give. If you can give your best, then everybody will have something to take away. So please be a giver than a receiver. All the best. Have a nice time, a nice, very good experience in upcoming 2 days. God bless you all.
Thank you, Mr. Punus. Secondly, I present you our MUN faculty advisor, Ms. Sophia Ryan, who will be talking about the KIS MUN Club and our journey so far. Over to you, Ms. Sophia.
Thank you, Kevin. Good evening to all the esteemed present here. We cannot rewrite the chapters of history already past, but we can learn from them, evolve, and adapt. The new normal may be even a better normal. All over the world, we are learning to learn with distance learning, which comes with distinct challenges. So has the MUN conferences. No one can say how long the crisis of pandemic will last. Thus, we are trying to adapt to the new normal. According to the policy brief by UN, the COVID-19 pandemic has created the largest disruption of education system in the history, affecting nearly 1.6 billion learners in more than 190 countries. The distance education by the online platform has prevented education from the crisis of generational catastrophe. So, why leave behind other experiences that the students get, such as MUN? Well, MUN so far was putting on a suit and working on the weekend. But this online platform has sought more in-depth requirement for MUN. At Kodaikanal International School, MUN is a motivational experience. The students take pride to pretend to be the world leaders during their club hours twice a week. I wonder from where they get the serious attitude and the diplomacy during these sessions. I think most of the MUN faculty advisors will have the same question. Actually, to many, MUN is fun. Yes, MUN is fun. And why not? When we go to the national and the international conferences, our students enjoy exploring new places, sharing common experiences with other school students, who very soon become friends and just being teammates in the committees. Our juniors love to go to such conferences because they get to observe from the experienced delegates the style and the decorum in delivering information through speeches, caucusing, and passing resolution. Believe me, KISMUN 3, the conception, the coordination, and now the online streaming, it is all a students-led show. I have seen an incredible transformation among the MUN students about their comprehension of the world perception. Being international school students, I'm very sure, no matter what profession they choose, they will be in a better position to interact with people from any part of the globe, as they will empathize with all and be a person that the world needs. Students develop confidence and leadership skills through experience. Model United Nations conferences are opportunities to practice research, public speak, teamwork, negotiation, and writing skill in a safe and structured environment. As mentioned earlier, we take part in national and international conferences. And so far, we have gone to the places like Mumbai, Hyderabad, Chennai, and to some other places like Sri Lanka, Dubai, Thailand as international conferences. And now, very soon, we are going to have the third KISMUN Open with the theme adaptability. We have 4 committees: SPECPOL, Commission on the Status of Women, the Futuristic Continuous Crisis Committee, Indian Parliament, Lok Sabha. I wish the chairs, co-chairs, and the moderators all the very best and have a cherishable experience. I also wish good luck to the executive board of KISMUN 3, Niharika Ghoshal, Arman Shawnee, and Kevin Yagappa. Last, but the most important part of this conference, the delegates from all the schools have a wonderful experienced delegates. What matters is not whether you win or lose, whether you pass the resolution or not, but the learning outcome and the acquaintance with all the committee members. Though it is the opening ceremony, I take the opportunity to thank few associates because without their support, this conference would have been not materialized. Our dynamic principal, Corey Stixrud, our efficient vice principal, Santosh Punnus, our generous finance director, Ganga Christus, and our creative chief marketing officer, Stephanie Covey. My sincere gratitude is extended to our keynote speakers, Dr. Radha Kumar, Samarth Pathak, and Roy Varia, who is from the United Nations Population Asia Pacific Regional Office, and all the friends, well-wishers, and faculty advisors, and the principals of the participating schools to support us in our KISMUN 3 mission. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sophia. And finally, from our faculty team, I present to you our principal, Mr. Corey Stixrud, although couldn't be here, sends us the best of luck and a short pre-recorded message.
Hello, we welcome all of you to our KIS MUN, affectionately known to some as KISMUN Conference 2020. We're so happy to have schools from all over joining us for this, including the International School of Hyderabad, the Woodstock School in Missouri, Vidya Niketan School in Bangalore, Legacy School, also from Bangalore, the JSS Private School from Dubai, Abacus Montessori School from Chennai, our own school delegates from KIS, and many, many individual delegates joining us from schools in India and across Asia. There's over 100 delegates to this conference, so welcome to all of you. Before I get too far into my address, I would like to acknowledge the MUN staff advisor here at KIS, Ms. Sophia Ryan, and the incredible team of students who have put this together. I hope you get ample opportunity to interact with them. Sarah and Leah and Abhavir and Anshuman, Ava Nina, Mega, Sangmin, Yiwan, Kyrin, Inanna, Meher, the three organizing committee heads, Kevin and Dia and Shifani, the Deputy Secretary General Arman Sani, and finally, with a round of applause, the Secretary General of KISMUN 2020, Niharika Koshal. They are smart students, but they are also wonderful individuals. And I know that all of you are in great hands for this conference. So I was an international relations major in college, and the theme and topics that our KISMUN committee have chosen seem so apt for the world at this point in time. The theme of adaptability is especially fitting. It is a progressive and forward-thinking notion, and certainly a pragmatic one, that all nations should work together to adapt to a rapidly changing world. Adaptability has two definitions. We can think of it as the quality of adjusting to new realities, but we can also think of it as the ability or the capacity to modify current conditions, like ideas or even institutions, to better face the future. Understanding this second definition of adaptability seems to me to be of particular importance to the world today. We can adapt to global warming. For instance, we can adapt to COVID. But over the course of this conference, I urge you to also consider what you can modify, what you can change, how all of us together can be transformative in our thoughts and our actions to build a better world. The main work of this year's MUN conference will take place across 4 committees. SpecPol is going to be looking at the Venezuelan crisis. They've chosen to focus on the crisis in Venezuela, a nation laden with conflicts in multiple forms. The current pandemic has only worsened the situation for so many of Venezuela's citizens. What we are seeking in committee is not just problem solving. We are looking for a careful dissection of every single factor that has contributed to worsening the plight of the people in Venezuela. The committee wants you to study the crisis in its entirety and put forth feasible, groundbreaking strategies to combat the situation. The CSW committee is looking at the socioeconomic empowerment of women in the context of global uncertainty. COVID-19 is a crisis that demands urgent responses. As the pandemic spreads, a coordinated and integral response to healthcare, care policies, and other measures are required in order to mitigate the social and economic impacts of the crisis. Women are often at the front line of health and care response in healthcare centers, social services, communities, and households, often ensuring the well-being, care, and resilience of people affected, the elderly, children, girls and boys, and their families. So the economic consequences will be far-reaching and will deepen existing inequalities, including in gender inequalities. FCCC, this is interesting. This is a committee that is looking at a hypothetical challenge. I've been given this to read. It's interesting. Welcome, delegates. The year is 2150. The world as we know it is ceasing to exist. Havoc ensues in every corner. No country is left spared. Tensions are rising, with diplomacy no longer being the first option that countries turn to resolve conflicts. To successfully maneuver this committee, only the best and most brilliant representatives from each country are recommended to attend. We eagerly await to see you on the 23rd of October, as that day is the beginning of the end. Will you save humanity or completely destroy it? I love that. The fourth committee is looking at, through the lens of the Lok Sabha, is looking at the drug crisis amongst Indian youth. Drug abuse is a rising topic in today's society and is a top concern for many professionals in the area of health, more specifically public health of a given community. Drug abuse patterns are known for their ability to change over time. Both licit and illicit substance use causes serious public health problems in many nations, including India. At a national level, prevalence has been calculated for many substances of abuse, but regional variations are quite evident. So all of these committees were designed to address our current shared reality, and the intention is that all of you, in whatever committee that you are on, thoroughly equip yourselves and your countries to not only meet the struggles and obstacles that all of us face head on, even as the COVID-19 pandemic exacerbates pre-existing fault lines, but to think in creative new ways that help us build capacity for transformative thinking and action. It is now my pleasure to say a few words about our keynote speakers. Dr. Radha Kumar. Dr. Kumar is a specialist in ethnic conflicts, peacemaking, and peace building. Formerly co-founder and director general of the Delhi Policy Group, Dr. Kumar has also been director of the Mandela Center for Peace and Conflict Studies at Jamia Millia Islamia University. She was also the senior fellow in peace and conflict studies at the Council on Foreign Relations in New York. She was the executive director of the Helsinki Citizens Assembly in Prague, an associate fellow at the Institute for War and Peace Studies at Columbia University. She was also a member of the Council on Security and Cooperation in the Asia Pacific. She is currently on the board of the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute and the Council of the United Nations University. From October 2010 to October 2011, Dr. Kumar served as a member of the three-member group of interlocutors appointed by the government of India for Jammu and Kashmir. Dr. Kumar holds a PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University in Delhi and an MA and BA from Cambridge University. She is the author of 5 books and over 100 journal articles and book chapters, as well as several dozen op-eds and about 30 reports. Dr. Samarth Pathak is based in New Delhi. Samarth Pathak is a public advocacy specialist and policy analyst with a keen interest in human rights, international relations, politics, and SDGs. He is currently associated with the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, in South Asia. Mr. Pathak was previously associated with the Aspen Institute of India, the Energy and Resources Institute, and ANI Reuters TV. His experience encompasses policy analysis and public advocacy, Track 2 diplomacy, strategic communications, news reporting and production, and analysis. Dr. Pathak currently writes for the Huffington Post, and his reports and op-eds have also appeared in The Guardian, in Reuters AlertNet, Dawn, Hard News, and the Asian Age. He received his MA in Human Rights and Duties from the Department of Political Science at Jamia Millia Islamia, and a BA with honors in journalism from the University of Delhi. We are absolutely honored to have Dr. Radha Kumar and Dr. Samarth Pathak as our esteemed guests for the KISMUN conference. We thank both of you immensely for making yourself available as keynote speakers for KISMUN 2020. So back to you, student organizers, and once again, welcome, absolutely welcome to all of you, and we know that you will have a wonderful conference.
Thank you so much, Mr. Corey, although you're not present with us here. Now, I take honor in presenting to you, as Mr. Corey mentioned, our first keynote speaker for today, Dr. Radha Kumar, here to share her expertise in the fields of women's rights, war-torn situations, and her foresights of the COVID-19 pandemic. Over to you, Dr. Kumar.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Am I audible now?
Yes, you are.
It's an honor to be addressing the KIS Model UN sessions. I'm terribly impressed by your choice not only of the overall theme, but of the 4 specific subgroup themes. Since Dr. Santosh has already briefly covered, along with Dr. Ryan, the impact of COVID on education, and in particular on school students such as yourselves, I will only say a few words about that. I have been enormously impressed by the way that schools and universities across the world have adjusted to the pandemic and to the need for so radically altering and reorganizing their educational systems. At the same time, we should bear in mind that digital coverage is very limited in many, many parts of the world, including our own. Only 42% of schools, of school-going children, according to a recent survey in India, have access to online education. So bear in mind that 58% of our young population has already suffered a 9-month complete gap in any form of education. And this should be a matter of really grave concern for us. Sociologists have pointed out some of the potential and ongoing impacts of the safety measures that we need to take in order to try to restrict the growth and spread of COVID. Isolation inevitably has social consequences, not only on the psyche of the individual, but also on the behavior of small collectives, for example, within the family. As most of you are probably aware, rates of domestic violence have risen sharply again in many parts of the world, including our own. And perhaps, as you may not be aware, here where we live in the south of India, rates of domestic violence have always been surprisingly high. Why do I say surprisingly high? Surprisingly, because actually women in the south of India, by and large, tend to be more empowered than women in the north or the east of India. Rates of education for women are very high here. Far more women have bank accounts here than they do in other parts of the country. Yet, domestic violence and unfortunately, it's connected, one of the causes, high rates of alcoholism, are both prevalent in the south of India. and certainly as citizens of this part of the country, I imagine that we would be all looking for what we can do to try to improve the situation for women here. You know, while we all talk about the negative impacts of the COVID pandemic, which are undeniable, indisputable, and certainly, if not a permanent change, do have a long-lasting impact, not only on systems of health, education, ways of living, social interaction, but also on the economy and on governance at large. We should also bear in mind that this pause period that we are undergoing right now does give us an opportunity to reflect, to regroup, to think more deeply about the kinds of measures that can be taken at a time like this, when to some extent, maybe to a large extent, because of the isolation, we tend to be far less active in terms of civil society than we were able to be earlier. I mean, inevitably, because you are isolated, it means that the normal forms of civic voices expressing themselves through dissent, through public protest, those have been muted, in particular in our country, but to a large extent all over the world. That means that the kind of accountability that one would normally look for in a democratic system of governance are also perceptibly weakened. We have seen, again, two trends, one might say, emerge over the past couple of years. One was a trend of increasing democratization through, indeed, the spread of digital media and other forms, social media, where you would find that, vast numbers of individuals who did not feel they had a voice earlier are able to express their voice. It is not a particularly happy voice we hear. As we know, social media by its very nature, as the internet 20 years ago, these were sites to express dissatisfaction and sites for immediate venting of your emotional anger. They were not sites actually for engaged, thoughtful, deliberative dialogue to prepare ideas for change. Nevertheless, the fact that so many millions more had a voice on social media did provide the opportunity to analysts or academics like myself and Samarth, or to multilateral organizations such as the United Nations, to be able to look in a much broader spectrum at the kinds of sentiments that people had, and then to build analyses and policies on the basis of that knowledge. And so that was, to some extent, a general good, what many call big data. It provided not only a great deal of scope for better refined, more thoughtful policy approaches, it also, I would say, impacted quite considerably on many multilateral structures. If you look at the UN and how it has transformed over the past couple of years, you see that there's far more UN engagement with civil society groups and organizations across the globe. That would have been far more difficult earlier. It has become much easier now, and I would predict for your continuous crises committee that this is one possible ray of light, that multilateral institutions can be encouraged to engage even more with civil society and with remote, isolated groups across the world that were not able to gain visibility earlier, this is something that is now possible and therefore actionable. Secondly, I would say that one of the problems that we have, and it's a growing problem, this is the negative trend that we have seen over the past couple of years, a growing trend of chauvinism and of authoritarianism. And both the chauvinism and the authoritarianism that we have seen sweeping parts of Europe, parts of, certainly large parts of Asia, parts of the Americas, the Middle East and Africa, in fact, all over the world. Those trends have grown under the pandemic. As I said at the beginning, the fact that there is less potential for accountability because of the isolation that is required by the pandemic has meant that many governments have taken that kind of pause as an opportunity to pass more draconian legislation, to discriminate more directly against whether it's immigrants or whether it's minorities. In both cases, we have seen considerable violence against minorities, against immigrants, against, well, women we already talked about. Indeed, even child trafficking figures have gone up rather than gone down in this period, as one might have hoped they would. You are looking, I think you have a committee looking at the Indian Parliament. One point that I have noted very strongly over the past year is how little debate and discussion there is in Indian Parliament today. Legislation of the most far-reaching nature that affects millions and millions and millions of our citizens tends to be passed within a day, sometimes within an hour. No debate, no discussion, no public opinion or consultation. It's alarming. And I would hope that your committee will look at that and ask, is that really in the spirit of a democratic parliament? Is that what the Constitution of India intended? Is that what we were promised in our country, that we would have no voice even, no ability to put forward our opinions on a legislation that will affect not only my life, but my children's life, possibly my grandchildren's life? It is, to me, shocking. Another shocking instance, I would say for me, is we are all aware of how the lockdown in our country in March, which in some ways was a thoughtful lockdown. It was a preemptive lockdown. At the same time, it was decided unilaterally, without consultation, without discussion, and what ended up happening was a crisis affecting something like 500 million migrant workers in our country. They were left alone, they were thrown out of their accommodations, they were not paid their salaries. We have all seen the miserable ways in which they had to walk thousands of kilometers to return to their villages, how many of them died on the way. And we are told now that our government has no data and no figures on the migrants and the crisis they underwent. And this is impossible. It is impossible to believe that there is no data. State governments can collect the data. They must have collected some data. After all, on what basis were some provisions made in some states to provide food and shelter for migrants? That had to be on the basis of some data. In any case, the first reaction for me on that was, how great a callousness can you have as a government? To say you don't have data, to not even say you will go out of your way to collect the data. And you're saying all of this because people are saying, what are you going to do to compensate these people? These suffering citizens of our own country? It seems to me that that may be perhaps the biggest question to ask not only of our government, but of our parliamentarians and of our assembly appointees, indeed even of our district councils. What? Why? Those are two huge, huge expressions of shock that I feel it is incumbent upon us as citizens of India and as people who have some commitment to idealism in the form of the United Nations. Here you are debating around the United Nations. The United Nations was formed as a forum to improve the condition of people all across the world. The governments that joined the United Nations made that commitment. And that commitment was not made to the United Nations, it was made to the people of the world. Something we should never forget. Unfortunately, of course, all multilateral institutions have huge bureaucracies. And as we all know, bureaucracies often tend to take over priority action agenda points. Nevertheless, I would say that this particular UN of the past 2 or 3 years that I have seen has made a concerted shift back towards human values, human rights, common goals, and humanitarian concerns. The UN, perhaps of the 1990s and of the early 2000s, did not have that strong a commitment as the current UN under the current Secretary General does have. And the sad thing is that that shift back towards the original ideals of the UN is happening at a time when perhaps the least number of governments are committed and interested in making the UN and its programs progress. An increasing number of countries, unfortunately, have retreated to their own sites of power as against the multilateral endeavor. Perhaps that's inevitable, that whenever institutions move towards more ideal humanitarian goals, it often happens at a time when multilateral activities are weak in nature. It's as they grow stronger, you will find, of course, that there is more contestation for countries to push their agendas through multilateral institutions like the UN. I find that lawyers in India actually say to me that the best, most humanitarian, most democratic legal interpretations, case law setting happens, in fact, in India when the governments are weak. When the governments are strong, very sadly, the courts allow draconian actions to go unchallenged and unpunished. That may be a question for all of you to debate too. Why is it that it is so difficult for humanitarian action to have the impact that it should have in a situation where governments actually have a greater capacity to implement those actions? Yet, when the governments have a less capacity or a weaker capacity, you find that the ideal is stronger and the call for action is greater. This is a rather unfortunate paradox that we all need to think how we can resolve. Now, I'm sure that my time is running out. I just want to leave you with one thought. At the beginning of this pandemic, the UN Secretary General called for all countries to agree to ceasefires. Naturally, since the focus had to be on health and safety uh, one would have hoped that that call would have been adhered to by member states of the UN. Unfortunately, just as we have seen more authoritarianism and governments taking the opportunity of this period to enforce draconian actions, we have also seen a rise and a spread in conflict across the globe, including, of course, our own borders, on our own borders. That, again, is something that I hope if you get to make a resolution, you will call attention to the need for ceasefires at this point to permit countries to focus on what is really important, which is looking after people suffering from this pandemic and thinking about what economic measures are required to provide at least a safety net to all those people who have suffered such huge economic losses in this period. One little point I would like to leave you with in addition is I imagine that you all know that India is in the presidency of the WHO at this point, and that if you have suggestions on what can be done to improve health and safety conditions, I would suggest please write to the health minister of our country, both in his capacity as the health minister of India, but also more importantly, as the president currently of the WHO, for what we can do together with governments all across the world to cope with this pandemic. Thank you, and I wish you the very best for your deliberations. Indeed, I shall be silently listening into some of them.
Thank you so much for the wealth of information that I'm sure we've all gained from that speech, Dr. Kumar. And I'm sure that throughout this conference, we're going to be asking those two questions you mentioned, what and why. Now, I take the same honor in presenting to you our second keynote speaker for the day, Mr. Samarth Pathak, here to share his experience in working with the UNODC, brief us a bit about the Education for Justice initiative KISMUN is in support of, and finally, share his views on current world situations of crime. Over to you, Mr. Samarth.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. So thank you very much, and hope you have all been safe and well. We have learned so much from the wonderful keynote address by Dr. Radha Kumar and the previous speakers. And on behalf of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, I'm delighted to be a part of this very special, very important KIS Model United Nations. I'm honored to join this session with the very inspiring Professor Dr. Radha Kumar and thank the Kodaikanal International School, Mr. Punus, Ms. Sophia, for convening all of us today. I call this MUN special for 4 reasons. One, because it is being held during and despite COVID-19, which is the most pressing global challenge that the world has ever seen. 2, because it is coinciding with the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. 3, because it marks the spirit of the Sustainable Development Goals, which is adaptability and unity for peace, development, and partnerships. And 4, because it is a completely student and educators-driven initiative, which is a need of the hour. Now, I want to recount an incident that happened last evening. A younger cousin of mine called me up to seek guidance on a very interesting topic that his school had asked him to write an essay on. The question was simple but profound, and it set both of us thinking. The question was, what do our superhero movies, movies with action figures and superheroes and heroines, what do our favorite superhero movies teach us about peace and global problems? And this set both of us thinking. We kept discussing, and it was a very good sort of an introspection on really, what is the key takeaway that we have. And after a lot of discussion, we came up with 3 main takeaways, and let's see if you agree with them or not. The first takeaway that we had was that global problems affect everyone equally, directly or indirectly, whether or not they are aware of them. So, be it climate change or conflict or social tensions or whatever it doesn't matter whether you're aware of them or not. If it is a global challenge, it will affect you indirectly or directly. The second takeaway was that it is important for all of us to be aware of and take action to solve some of these global problems. And the third takeaway was that these global challenges are very difficult. They need effective cooperation from all fronts. It is not about one individual, one country, or one organization, but it requires effective partnerships between everyone, especially bridging gender divides. You need boys, girls, men, female, and other genders to work together through effective cooperation to solve some of these global challenges. So these takeaways, really sort of inspired us, and I felt that they are very important, especially in the times that we live in. As we have all seen by now, the COVID-19 crisis has caused a huge disruption. It has posed very serious risks, not only to health and well-being, but also in other spheres, be it economy, education, social dynamics, human rights, and overall security and stability of nations. There are also emerging social risks like discrimination and exclusion, misinformation and fake news, gender based violence, cybercrime, mental health and anxieties, crime and social strife, among other things. And that is why it is really encouraging to see that in this new normal, we are all trying our best to spread positivity through action by connecting with each other and by joining hands to help each other and get to know each other. I think that has been the greatest takeaway from this unprecedented situation, that partnerships for peace, for development, for the sustainable development goals are absolutely an imperative. The other takeaway, of course, is rethinking our engagement on our contribution for justice, for peace, for SDGs, and other issues that matter. The question here is there a need? Is there a space to reimagine how education can be used to empower and engage young people to meaningfully contribute to peace and well-being of everyone as we build back from COVID-19? And my answer is yes, we do need a recalibration in our approach, especially because this is, of course, the decade of action. 2030 is just 10 years away. And this is our last chance to actually commit and take concrete steps to think about the future we want and build it without leaving anyone behind. And therefore, it is an imperative for young people to come to the forefront and take charge, gain knowledge, speak up, take action, and lead the change. This is somewhat of a cliche, and we have always heard this, that youth hold the key to the future and they are the greatest hope that the planet has. But as the world grapples with the pandemic and charts a new future, this is the time for young people to commit to strengthen peace, the rule of law, and the SDGs, and act to promote justice and act with solutions and innovations. At UNODC, we believe that this cannot be achieved without education, and specifically education for peace and justice, which is in line with the UN's principle of leaving no one behind and the SDGs. In this context, a global flagship program of UNODC, the Education for Justice Initiative, as well as the India-specific Lockdown Learners Program, have been actively engaging with students and educators at the primary, secondary, and university levels. We are doing this through values-based learning, activities-based education, and the idea is to empower students and educators in playing more tangible roles in the social space and catalyzing and creating responsible and proactive citizens who are catalysts for social change. I urge all of you to take a look at it and connect with us if you're interested. Today, as we start this MUN at the Kodaikanal International School, I have a special appeal to all the delegates and participants. You will be engaging in dialogue in the coming days. You will be debating and talking about a variety of very interesting and very relevant issues and topics of concern. You will be drafting resolutions and notes as well. However, do remember your very special role in this historic crisis that we are in. Think about what you can do to supplement what you are saying. Your participation in this MUN will be truly impactful if you can also come up with innovative solutions and ideas, practical ideas, to solve the problems that you are discussing and formulate plans of executing them. My appeal is that it's not enough to talk, also support what you're talking with concrete action. This MUN should ideally be a forum of action amid this pandemic and a base from where you can create problem-solving networks with other young people and emerge as ideapreneurs to address the challenges facing the world today. This could be in the form of using technology to drive information. It could be promoting awareness and advocacy on critical issues. It could be creating small social startups or social campaigns to solve some of the problems that you're discussing, or creating networks with other young people, as maybe having a club where you can raise these issues together. Remember, all it takes to bring about a change are intent, ideas, innovations, and implementation. So I'll conclude that by saying that to build back better from COVID-19, we do need a renewed commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals. We must remember that this is the decade of action, and it is critical for all of us to integrate our efforts and join hands to create a better and more peaceful world. For this, we need 3 Ys: youth engagement, youth commitment, and youth action. And this MUN, I'm sure, is the starting point of this revolution. Thank you for your time, and I wish this Model UN a lot of success and look forward to seeing your collective efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Samarth, for the insight you've given us on these really important topics pertaining to current world situations. I'm sure this MUN will be an embodiment of the 3 Ys. Before we move on, delegates, just a small note that we are going over time. And so I request that you do continue watching the opening ceremony, and after it's done, join your individual committee sessions. Continuing on, tomorrow, Mr. Roy Wadia, the current head of communications at the UN Population Fund Asia Pacific Regional Office, will be joining us from 4:30 to 5 p.m. to celebrate World United Nations Day. And what better way to do it than in an MUN conference? Finally, I pass the mic to our Secretary General, Niharika Ghoshal, to give us her closing note and officially declare this conference open. Over to you, Niharika.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you all for your wonderful insights. Delegates, faculty advisors, and distinguished guests, welcome to the 3rd edition of KISMUN. How are you all doing amidst this pandemic? I hope the spirits are high, and I hope that the next 3 days will be filled with engaging debate as we forge international relations of the future. My name is Niharika Ghoshal, and it is my absolute pleasure and privilege to serve as your Secretary General for KISMUN 2020. I'm thankful to you all, the entire KISMUN team who have worked tirelessly to put this conference together. Our mentors, Mr. Corey, Mr. Punus, Ms. Sophia, Ms. Ganga, Ms. Stephanie, and every single one of you that showed us support and encouragement. Thank you for making this conference a dream come true for many. John F. Kennedy once said, "One person can make a difference, and everyone should try." This particular quote resonates with me because in this age of ambiguity and uncertainty, there is no answer. We need to collectively try to be comprehensively prepared and equipped to accept the reality and overcome all obstacles. There's only one reason that I assume all of us have assembled here today. We have never seen, at least in this generation, a time so devastating for the entire world. Millions are succumbing to this deadly virus, and existing fault lines are being exacerbated. While Australia was combating devastating bushfires, COVID-19 was only a headline, and it only gained substantial attention when it started spreading rapidly to other nations and was officially declared a global pandemic. For many nations, the state apparatus was too inadequate to contain COVID-19 and still is. I want to reiterate here that in this day and age, issues trivial as they are perceived initially become global headlines soon to only attract attention then. A social media post of George Floyd's tragic death was the reason to attract attention to a long-standing debate and its repercussions. Did we really take so long to stand up against persistent and inherent violations of human rights that have lasted for years? Delegates, it is in your hands to put aside any sense of nationalism, to use your voice and make a strong stand in the world that we live in today. Your involvement in MUN has and is raising global awareness. Revisiting John F. Kennedy's saying, everyone in this conference, watching the opening ceremony, wherever you are partaking in this massive paradigm of collective action, fighting the ambiguity that we are faced with today with proactivity, which has been lacking for the past few years. If I were to pull out a mason jar right now and set it right here in front of me and place a dozen fist-sized rocks into the jar one at a time till the top of the rim and asked you if the jar is full, what would your answer be? Take 10 seconds.
Niharika, it's full. What else?
Okay. Well, now I'm going to pull out a bucket of gravel and dump it into this jar and shake it so the gravel works itself down into the spaces between the big rocks. Is the jar full now?
Probably not. I don't think so.
Good. Now I'm going to bring out a bucket of sand and dump it into this mason jar. Okay, the jar still isn't full. Now I'm going to pour some water into the jar.
So basically what you're trying to say is that no matter how full your schedule is, if you try really hard, you could always fit some more things into it.
Yes, you're on the right track. But the truth this illustration teaches us is if you don't put the big rocks in first, you'll never get them in at all. Therefore, it's a progressive process. But at this point in time, we better begin prioritizing global necessities as our survival is the largest priority. This is a model by Dr. Stephen R. Covey from his famous book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. As the UN Secretary General has said, national flags are marks of pride and patriotism in every country around the world. But there is only one flag that belongs to all of us. That blue flag of the United Nations has been a banner of hope across the world in testing times such as wars and many other atrocities. We are extremely fortunate to be able to host this conference on the United Nations Day, which is tomorrow, the 24th of October. The UN is an organization that has abiding faith in the people. Let's further this equitable construct and opportunity over the next few days to engage in fruitful discussions in the SPECPOL, CSW, FCCC, and Lok Sabha committees. To increase our impact, our partnership with UNODC's advocacy movement, known as Education for Justice, as Mr. Pathak earlier mentioned, will give us a platform to showcase the resolutions that we pass in committee. In addition, we have the privilege of having an esteemed guest, as Kevin earlier mentioned, Mr. Roy Wadia, a regional communications advisor at the UN Population Fund, Asia Pacific Regional Office, addressing the conference on what the future holds for us. So please stay tuned for that. Delegates, please leverage these expert insights and opportunities to excel in your committees and establish comprehensive resolutions. Before I sign off, I want to give you a few important guidelines for entering your committees right after this opening ceremony. Use the Zoom link sent to you by your committee chairs to enter your respective committees. Log in with your full name that you registered for the conference with so that we can let you in as soon as possible. This process will take anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes. MUN may seem like an overly optimistic representation of what is achieved at the real United Nations, and to some extent, that may be true. However, the accuracy to which we simulate the UN is not what matters here. What matters is the genuine intention of understanding other cultures and effecting real impact in the world. We are fundamentally idealists at heart. And as idealists, we don't carry the simplistic belief that the world will get better, but that the world can get better. We as Model United Nations delegates are not blindly optimistic, but pragmatically hopeful. I now declare KISMUN 2020 officially open. Now I hand it over to you, delegates. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Niharika. And now that the conference is officially open, delegates and faculty advisors, please follow the instructions sent to you via email to join each of your individual committee sessions. And on that note, thank you for being a part